If you please take seats, we have the opportunity to have a short introduction by Dr. Camilla Borghese, which will illustrate a very effective example of concrete application of the social doctrine. Please, Camilla.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for giving me this chance to introduce this initiative that is a good synthesis of all the principles that we heard today in this conference on education, on the Chinese proverb, on Africa relationship, on inclusivity. Actually, this initiative wouldn't have been possible if I wouldn't be a member of the Centesimus Annus, and I'm nourished always from the Pope Francis speeches and intentions. And it is an inclusivity project because Professor Colizzi, that works in Tor Vergata, is actively collaborating with the Faculty of Pharmacy of the Catholic University in Bamenda in Cameroon. And the scholarship that we give to 3 students graduated in the University of Camerino, Tor Vergata, and Urbino in pharmacy is integrating in a bigger, larger project that you can understand maybe on the video. Tor Vergata has financed the Euro Biopark in Douala, and Camerino the Pro-Herbal Care, always in Cameroon. Why Cameroon? Professor Quadrio-Curzio, in his introduction, brilliant introduction, also evidenced that Africa is our border. And we giving them education because of the pharmacy degree in Italy, and also the practice that they had a chance to take with this scholarship that we give to the 3 students, and then to go back and make a start-up in Cameroon of 2 very interesting projects that are to prevent the misuse in antibiotics in the breeding of chicken, which is a great problem in Cameroon, as the children have antibiotics in their blood. And giving probiotic, especially developed for chicken during the breeding, is a way to prevent the rise of antibiotic resistance. And also, the other project is in extracting from moringa, which the FAO has, is a plant that FAO declared the plant of the year, as it is very rich in anti-inflammatory principle and good integrator. And the development of the extract of this herbal product will help the population in Cameroon instead of assuming street drugs that have no quality. And the conference, the Italian Episcopal Conference, has put 100,000, financed with 100,000 euros, this laboratory in Cameroon. So please, you can send the video again that we have shown this morning. Siamo arrivati a compiere 100 anni. L'Istituto Biochimico Italiano, fondato dal professor Giovanni Lorenzini, oggi è una realtà presente in tutto il mondo con i propri antibiotici. La filosofia del bisnonno, fare per dare, ci motiva quotidianamente e dà anche alle nostre scelte un contributo importante.
E in linea con il nostro credo abbiamo voluto celebrare questo importante traguardo premiando 3 ragazzi del Camerun che si sono laureati in farmacia presso 3 università italiane, Urbino, Camerino e Tor Vergata, con una borsa di studio del valore di 10.000 euro.
Una bella iniziativa per dare continuità a un impegno sociale che era già stato preso nel 1977 quando la IBI ha firmato un accordo con una società algerina per sviluppare un impianto di produzione antibiotici proprio a Medea.
È un progetto che ha previsto e sta finendo quella fase di formazione sulla produzione industriale appunto all'Istituto Biochimico Italiano, che ha offerto questa possibilità e che ha la collaborazione della Conferenza dei Rettori delle Università Italiane e della Conferenza Episcopale Italiana, che ha messo a disposizione all'Università Cattolica di Bamenda, nell'ovest del Camerun, un laboratorio galenico acquistato appunto con i fondi della CEI. Quindi è una buona cooperazione pubblico-privato che permetterà a questi giovani di cominciare a fare una produzione di qualità nella lotta più generale alla contraffazione dei farmaci da strada, che in Africa rappresentano un problema di sanità pubblica.
Con la borsa di studio i 3 laureati stanno affrontando un percorso formativo on the job che si articola in 2 fasi. La prima fase, che è in corso presso i nostri laboratori di ricerca e sviluppo, è finalizzata a far sì che i ragazzi prendano dimestichezza sia con le regole GMP e approfondiscano la loro conoscenza degli strumenti di laboratorio. La seconda fase si svolgerà a Bamenda in Camerun presso i laboratori galenici finanziati dalla CEI e all'interno dei quali i ragazzi appunto impareranno a produrre i farmaci galenici.
Grazie a questa borsa di studio dall'IBI ho potuto acquisire le tecniche che uno deve avere per poter svolgere un'attività lavorativa all'interno di un'azienda farmaceutica. Ho anche imparato a vivere in famiglia, insomma, in azienda farmaceutica, e ho l'opportunità di andare in Camerun a riprodurre la stessa cosa, quindi a fare un tipo di trasferimento di tecnologia.
Ho avuto l'opportunità di fare questa borsa di libri che ci permette di avere un'esperienza in una industria farmaceutica e spero che dopo questa esperienza potrò utilizzare questa opportunità che ho avuto per aiutare a produrre farmaci per la salute delle persone che vivono lì.
E abbiamo avuto la fortuna di lavorare con persone bravissime che hanno dato tanto del loro tempo aiutandoci a imparare come si lavora in ambienti sterili, come lavorare in norma GMP. Spero di poter portare giù in Camerun queste conoscenze in modo di fare anche una cosa importante nel mio paese.
Quindi ringrazio molto Libby e tutta la squadra che mi ha consentito di fare questa esperienza meravigliosa e di crescere di più nella professionalità, carriera professionale, e di acquisire tante cose che altrimenti non avrei potuto imparare.
E ringrazio tanto la squadra del reparto ricerca e sviluppo per la loro disponibilità. Grazie.
Tutti noi di IBI siamo stati molto contenti di conoscere Rick, Quentin ed Elvira. perché anche noi abbiamo imparato molte cose della loro tradizione e del loro paese. Ancora una volta il nostro credo ci ha insegnato che ogni volta è sempre un'occasione per arricchirsi professionalmente e personalmente.
Celebrando i propri 100 anni, la IBI raccoglie le sfide di questa società e testimonia anche che la ricchezza non è fuori di noi, ma è dentro di noi, nelle capacità che ciascuno di noi riesce a sviluppare e mettere al servizio del proprio prossimo, della propria società per il bene comune.
Thank you, Camilla, for this opportunity to know and experience very interesting experience. We could call it E for impact, entrepreneurship for impact, for social impact. Please now I invite the panelists of the third session to come to the floor. As you know, vuoi stare vicino al computer? No, come vuoi, come vuoi. Chi è che manca? Dottor Father Justinus, I don't see where Father Justinus is. We will come. At some point he will come. Okay. Allora, let's start the third working session of our conference, which is focused on human work and inclusive employment. Welcome. This session represents an opportunity to reflect on employment and broader labor issues, and to acknowledge the significant contribution that every worker, man or woman, native or migrant, can make towards building a better and brighter future of the world, if he or she is given the opportunity to do so. Our foundation, as you know, has been working on job uncertainties and the future of work in digital context on several occasions in the last couple of years. I just mentioned the Dublin Pros consultation in Madrid, January 27, the international conference at the Vatican last year, the Italian members' conferences both in Rome and Turin in 2016 and 2017, and the German-speaking members' conference in Berlin last November. The world of work is today undergoing a major process of change, as current technological change is challenging our traditional understanding of employment. The impact of technology is tremendous. For example, the demand of industrial robots has accelerated considerably in recent years as a result of continued technological advancement in automation system and artificial intelligence. Technological change notably transforms work patterns, destroys some jobs, creates others, and changes the nature and the task performed. Job specifications also are rapidly evolving. For example, the introduction of microsurgery has had a significant impact on the profession of doctors. The responses to these challenges require, of course, adapting and extending academic and professional education and training to all. But where exactly do we stand as far as unemployment and working conditions? The latest developments in global unemployment are mixed. According to International Labour Organization, recent estimates, the world continues to experience different trends in employment outcomes. Developed countries are expected to enter their 6th consecutive year of decreasing unemployment, falling to 5.5% in 2018, the lowest rate since 2007. And yet many countries continue to report high rates of labor underutilization, with large share of discouraged workers and growing incidence of involuntary part-time employment. By contrast, emerging countries have experienced a significant increase in unemployment rates between 2014 and 2017, probably driven by major economic downturns, in part due to the commodity price slump in many large economies, such as Brazil and the Russian Federation. There are a number of unresolved problems. I just mentioned a few rapidly. The number of workers in the so-called vulnerable forms of employment. This number is likely to increase in the years to come. In 2017, around 42% of workers worldwide are estimated to be in vulnerable forms of employment. Similarly, global labor markets have seen only weak progress in the area of working poverty. In 2017, extreme working poverty remained widespread, with more than 300 million workers in emerging and developing countries having a per capita household income or consumption of less than $2 per day. Disparities across a number of demographic groups still persist. Gender disparities are of particular concern. On average, women are less likely to participate in the labor market, facing a global gender gap in participation of over 26 percentage points. And even worse, are less likely to find a job when they do participate. The lack of employment opportunity for youth, those under 25 years of age, presents another major global challenge. Young people are much less likely to be employed than adults, with the global youth unemployment rate 3 times higher than the adult rate. And finally, an aging population will add further pressure to future labor market challenges. I give you just a number. In developed countries, where population aging is considerably faster, is estimated that by 2030, there will be close to 5 persons aged 65 and over for every 10 persons in the labor force, up from 3.5 in 2017. And you can imagine the consequences for the pension system, for the labor market in general. So these are just some of the unresolved questions in the world of work. We have a high-level panel to discuss and present these problems in this session. We will begin with Professor Alessandra Del Bocca, which is going to give the introductory remarks. Professor Del Bocca is full professor of economic policy at the University of Brescia. She studied at Oxford University, has been visiting scholar in several American university. I mentioned just MIT, California, Berkeley, and University of Wisconsin. She extensively published in international newspapers, and she published books, popular books also in Italy on labor economics and macroeconometrics. Please, Professor Del Boca, have the...
Thank you. Shall I sit or you want me to go to the podium? Okay, that's fine. Audio? Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks to everybody for having me here. It's truly a fantastic experience, and I want to thank everybody for this invitation. Let me start by saying something about that we have heard in a number of occasions in the previous talks and in many of the speeches that have been given so far. The internet. Okay, next. Are you going to help me with the next? I have, but it doesn't work like before. Okay, now, perfect. Back. Okay, perfect. Okay. I said, let me start by saying that in the previous talks, I got the impression that it's now a common knowledge that the internet, with its massive diffusion, floods us with information and sometimes make us think that we are very well informed, but it's rather the opposite. We are flooded with information, but sometimes we just find that the news that we get are partial, are fake, and most of the time we do not have the time, just by being so persecuted by the information, we don't have the time to go deep in any topic. And specialized topics go so fast that only people that are specialized in those matters can follow and can understand. So the progress of scientific work makes the public opinion victims of beliefs that are in contrast with the scientific consensus. And so internet has increased the information, but also the misinformation and the perception of being informed when we're not. Human work is the fundamental element of social inclusion, and has always been, but it is more and more so because human work has been embodying more and more value. More human capital is required to have a position in the labor market, and consequently, being of greater value generates conflict and lots of misleading messages. This forward makes me come to the 3 points, 3 fallacies and 3 emergencies that I have singled out in a book that I recently wrote with Antonietta Mundo, which is called L'inganno generazionale, the generational fallacy. So what are the 3 fallacies that we find among the mass of fake news, slogans, and information that is discussed in the talk shows and in the media? The unemployment rate for the very young is a very serious problem, but it is not 36%. More older people working does not mean that we have more unemployed people. Technology does not destroy, but always in history has created jobs. Certainly technology creates moment of shocks to the employment system that have to be solved by institution, just leading by hand the people to more specialized jobs that are required by labor demand. Emergencies. Among these fallacies, we all have three emergencies that we have to tackle. Birth rate is declining. 470,000 young people will support 1 million of baby boomers' pension. So exactly half of what it was in the past. This really is a major task. Sustainability of the social security system, which is consistent and comes after a declining number of young people. And I want to say something that does really not appear to be related to the job, but underground economy is 12.6% of GNP, and it is the last is that number. This means that we do not receive enough resources for the state that are just literally robbed by the underground economy. So let's go to the first fallacy. When I say that unemployment rate is youth unemployment is a serious problem, I mean it is. But why I said before that it is not 36, but something around 9%, which is basically the European average. Unemployment rate is calculated by dividing unemployment by the activity rate, by the working population. If you divide this by age groups, what you have, I'll make it short and I will not go into technical details that are not appropriate at this time, but I want to show you that where this 38.6 is for year 12-16. So you see that 37.8 is the result of a number of unemployed people divided by a very small labor force. And why? Because labor force between 15 and 24 is in school. So, in fact, and this does not happen in the 25 to 34, where the activity rate is higher, and obviously not for the central adult. And the same can be said for the older. So the youth, the real young ones, the 15-24, are the ones whose unemployment rate is more misleading, is a misleading rate. And how do we correct? Eurostat does it. I didn't invent it. Eurostat decides to sort of normalize by putting the same type of a more homogeneous number, which is the number of population. If you take the number of people in that age group, you just normalize by the number of people. Instead, if you use the active labor force, I'll show you immediately with the next. You see, in school, you find 61%, and if you add the 4% of those that are in school and also in the labor force. So what are the reasons for these problems? First of all, we are the only country, actually there is another one, but we are just almost the only one, that where one can be a student and at the same time unemployed. In other European countries, you cannot, because either you're a student or you are in the labor force. This makes the number a little bit more misleading. This produces, all what I said, produces an extremely low employment rate for the 25-34. Why? Because the 25-34 is really the age group that is hit the worst. It's hit the worst because it has an older, more traditional type of education and has gotten into the labor market a few years ago, and now is about 30. What the young people that are in the age between 30 and 35 now are in real trouble because they are considered already old, and they have not had the attention that the 15-24 has had. And of those, some are still in education, so they still have the time to change their position, their studies, their education, their specializations. So, what are the causes? I mean, still, we have a problem with youth unemployment. But what I want to say is that we don't have to listen to those that this is the major problem. Almost 40% of the young kids are unemployed. This is really not true. But it is still a serious problem, and it's important that we know where to address our efforts, to the younger one or to the older one. Definitely to the older one. Those need our effort because the others need a different type of effort, need more intense training program, more vocational programs, more investment in human capital. So what are the causes? Certainly the IT revolution is one cause. Our country, the system, the exchange system, the labor market functioned on the basis of personal knowledge. We never had public employment services. We always tried to build some kind of a service, but we never did. We don't have a vocational training. We have a non-interactive type of education. So many aspects of our problem were just saw the IT revolution arriving as a true earthquake. Then the long double recession has certainly made things worse, but we are getting out of it finally. Our education is not updated to the labor market needs. We don't have a system like the German one with a great coordination between training, school, labor market offices. And also, I mean, the problem is that young people are 3 times as likely to be unemployed. This is normal and has always been like that for decades. But in the last 20 years, these difficulties have increased. And these difficulties have increased also for a positive fact. The positive fact is that the education has increased all over the world. And so you have fewer people that are able to respond to the new labor demand, which is more technical, it's more STEM, STM, and we are incapable of providing this type of education and this type of training. And also people tend to be longer in school just because they try to get more and more weapons to be equipped to face the struggle in the labor market. Also, going back to culture, it's a quick look at this shows you that this is a nice research that was done by Bocconi University. The percentage of individuals among majors shows you that Italian students tend to concentrate in the faculties where you have where you are less likely to have a high income. You see, it's just a mirror image. Human sciences and economics, engineering, medicine are at the opposite sides of this graph. And clearly, these choices will have to be somewhat changed, because we have lots of young kids with the professional qualifications that are not needed by the labor market. I strongly believe that in the future, humanistic sciences will be very strong and will eventually embrace completely the digital economy. There will be no sense of differences and opposition between digital and human sciences. Human sciences will be dealt, as it is already now, but it's just at the beginning, will be dealt with digital tools. So we will not see this, but this is the situation in our country. So what do we need? Investing in the quality of teaching, of interactive education, resolve the problem that we have no vocational guidance services, education disconnected from the relevant processes, personnel selection, and the strategy. Here I have a word for the companies. The strategy of human resources need to be reformed because they are still old-fashioned. We are obviously well known for our sometimes highly creative but small business. And some of the family-run management works on non-meritocratic criteria. And you see on that column, there is written merit as in one of the virtues. And I noticed it yesterday, and I found it very interesting that in the 1500 that was a great value. So we need new skill, human capital. We have too few graduates. So reforms. Digital, as I said, creates new jobs. And all jobs are remodeled. As it's been said before in this conference, new jobs will be less tiring, will be more technological. Even the high-level services that will be necessary because the older share of our population is increasing. So we will need more assistance and more qualified assistance. And these assistants will be run very much administratively on a digital base. So whatever job it's been performed will just undergo a remodeling process. And I see new jobs coming out every day. Every day there are jobs that I don't know what they mean, because some young kid probably generated it, created it. And so we have to be optimistic on the one side, but on the other side, we have to be totally guarded in the sense that we need to protect those that are to be led in between labor market situations. Only 8.8% of the candidates to the labor market has ICT skills. And this goes back to the graph I just showed you. There has been a lot of fake news and polemics on what the Job Act did. Just a couple of words. The Job Act had the right incentive, reduced layoffs, and reduced litigation, and generated 1 million people. 1 million. Of course, we are still behind 2008, or just barely matching 2008. We would need a national agency of active labor market, but it just was created a few months ago, in January last year. And so if you look at this, I will just go quickly because I have so many other things to tell you and time is running short. The growth of income is related to the growth of education. So if we don't solve the problems of the previous graph, we will find ourselves in dire straits. Work is the first form of social inclusion. Young people demanded And we needed to promote the collaboration between education and business by a real national agency and by specialized local employment centers that collaborate with the private ones. Many more generations work together. It's a moment where all the ages are on the labor market, more than before. And this is an opportunity of inclusion to be exploited. Business have to use the experience of the elderly. Training is a duty. And here another word for the companies, that is to be activated not only when state contributions are available. Firms must not expect tailor-made employees. They have to invest and include those if they want to grow at the pace of new business standard. No one should be left out of work due to age, gender, disability, race, religion, belief, maternity. Inclusion does not mean a good, quote mark thing. Inclusion is profitable. Inclusion generates profit margins. Inclusion is a good thing for the companies and for the business. Involves the different knowledge and perspective. Participate of people who want to participate and not only to accomplish tasks. The very nature of the new global business makes inclusion a competitive advantage. Those that are able to embrace all the contribution of the society will recognize the new global clients because tastes change continuously and customers change preferences continuously. And profiling of new clients are constantly evolving. So we want to have people who are able to recognize the new global clients and the new global tastes. Baby boomers leave the labor market. The Y generation is a natural conveyor of advanced and technological human capital. Inclusion and engagement are linked. This generation is naturally collaborative and will give the best away from the old managerial change of command and control structures. 5 minutes, I believe, that are finished. Is that right? I have another 2 minutes? Okay, let me go on. Another 2 minutes. Okay. One point. This is really, I'm really happy to use those 2 left minutes. A longer life does not reduce, a longer active life does not reduce youth unemployment because the jobs that are left by the elders that retire, of course, we have more people in the labor force because we had to make reforms like the Fornero reform. So obvious, in all European countries, not only in ours, total employment in an economy is not fixed, vary in its quality. In every moment of time, thousands of people change status in the labor market. So what we have is that the jobs left by the older retiring are not necessarily the ones that the young want to keep or want to be offered, because probably the young will be offered positions that they don't even have and that they are not given. So this match, this I heard so much, and I think it's really, and one good thing is that good EEC research shows that in countries where the older employment rate is higher, even the younger have a high employment rate, and all the age groups are represented in labor employment. So this is emergency one. You can tell if I show this and the next, you see that the older population is increasing, and this is a problem that it's the so-called demographic earthquake that makes the dependency index of all people on the young in constant growth from 34 to what will be in 2040, 46, and 51 in 2066. So you see that I leave you with the big question marks, and the facts and the possibilities are here to be discussed.
Thank you, Alessandra, for your comprehensive analysis of current problems in labor market, and thank you also for stressing the importance to invest in human capital, in training, in education. All these policies are effective to reduce disparities in the labor market. We have now in our session 3 presentations that will show the tremendous work done by the Foundation's local groups. As you know, our local chapters meet regularly. They work together on the topics indicated by the board well in advance. And now we have 3 presentations from 3 different countries, and this presentation will show how accurate and interesting is the work of the Foundation local groups. By the way, all these papers and analyses are freely available on the home site of our Foundation. We start with Malta, and with Professor Nadia Delicata, which is Senior Lecturer in Fundamental Moral Theology and Christianity and Culture at the Faculty of Theology of the University of Malta. Please, Nadia, have the floor. Did you arrange for the slide? So if it's possible to have the slide of Professor Delicata on the screen. You can start and then at some point, hopefully, they will arrive.
Okay. Thank you for this invitation. The presentation that we prepared, we titled it Work That Favors the Family, Recovering Integral Development in a Digital Age. And as you can tell from the title, we sought to do something that is more foundational and in many respects brings together different aspects of the conversation we have had so far. So aspects of work, of the family, but also this new ecology, this new environment we are living in of digital culture. And the starting point for this reflection is actually a quote from Pope Francis in his address to the General Confederation of Italian Industry in 2016 that says this: "In the complex world of business, working together means investing in projects that are able to involve subjects that are often forgotten or overlooked. Among them are, first of all, families, the focal point of humanity, in which the experience of work, the sacrifice that feeds it, and the fruits that derive from it find meaning and value." So we felt that this quote really touched on a key issue, and this key issue is in fact a manifestation, if you will, of our original sinfulness, which can be understood as a disconnect from a very fundamental disconnect in our understanding of what it means to be human, where our ends of creativity, that is our work, become disconnected, in fact, from our relational ends that are lived most fully in family life. But also, the quote shows how this disconnect between ourselves as relational beings, ourselves as workers, as creative, is also grounded in an inordinate desire for wealth, which is very much the reflection that we heard this morning from Archbishop Celli on the homily, in his homily. But it's not just that. It is not just a personal inordinate desire for wealth. It is also something that has been taken, if you will, to global proportions through the invisible rule of the market economy. So there is also a cultural foundation to this, and what we try to do is to offer some reflections on that cultural foundation, and more important than that, to try and see then what fundamental anthropological issues one would need to consider in this new digital age. So in terms of fundamental cultural challenges, first of all, there is something we inherit from modernity, and that can be perhaps best described through the philosophy of Charles Taylor and what he calls the great disembedding that leads to individualism, a disconnect from the order of being, but also a disconnect from the sense of the creator, of our being creatures vis-à-vis the creator. But what I would really like to focus on is something that is much more internal and personal, and this is something that emerges from the reflection of theologian Romano Guardini that Pope Francis, as you know, uses in the encyclical Laudato Si. And this is an internal, personal disconnect, which is a distanciation between our work, but also our creative power. Increasingly, what we do not see the immediate results. Increasingly, what we do, or rather what is being done, is automated, and we feel less and less in control of our own creativity. So, in a sense, what we are saying is that the current separation between family and work, between the economy and societal well-being, echoes this deeper disconnect between our creativity, our desire to create, but also a sense of disempowerment. And I think that this is precisely what Pope Francis in Laudato Si describes as the dominant technocratic paradigm, where it is techne that becomes our ideal, and we live according to the logic of techne rather than a humanism, a human logic. Pope Francis, there are various quotes from Laudato Si that are particularly powerful on this issue. I will just pick one, where he says, life gradually becomes a surrender to situations conditioned by technology, itself viewed as the principal key to the meaning of existence. In the concrete situation confronting us, there are a number of symptoms which point to what is wrong, such as environmental degradation, anxiety, a loss of the purpose of life and of community living, etc. So the point that Pope Francis suggests is that the conversion that we require cannot be simply cosmetic. Ultimately, it must start from within the human person himself or herself, but it must also have cultural, societal impact. And I would like to focus first on this personal dimension and then on the communal, societal dimension. So from the personal dimension, my suggestion would be that what we actually need is a recovery of the transcendent dimension of work. If the problem that we are being confronted by is a problem that is internal within us, but also a problem of disconnect from the creator, then there needs also to be a sense of the transcendent dimension of work. And in a sense, one can see this as analogous to what we celebrate in the sacrament of marriage. If we recover a transcendent dimension to work, our work really takes on a distinctly Christian and eschatological meaning. It can be truly understood as a vocation, as a mission, as something that we are personally called to. And in a sense, then one can also see how if through marriage we are called to become the domestic church, our sense of vocation, of personal vocation, fulfills an analogous role. But then there is something that is also much wider, more society-wide, that would require a cultural transformation. And I think Pope Francis picks up on this through a phrase that he uses in Laudato Si, where he calls for an economic ecology. And of course, as has been mentioned earlier today, both economy and ecology share the same root word, oikos. And oikos, of course, captures that sense of the milieu of human flourishing in intimate relationships, but also through the creative stewarding of the resources of the earth. So in a sense, that very sense of oikos recovers this intrinsic disconnect of the person in his relational reality and in his creative reality. However, what I think is crucial is that precisely because we are living in turbulent times, in times where change is happening, there is also the need for discernment. And I want to pick up on what Pope Francis himself uses as the criterion of discernment in new times. And that is also taken from Romano Guardini, where he says, the only measure for properly evaluating an age is to ask to what extent it fosters the development and attainment of a full and authentically meaningful human existence, but in accordance to the peculiar character and capacities of that age. What we really require is an assessment of what is the particular character and the peculiar characteristics of the digital age. What we would require is to help to strengthen the seeds of the Holy Spirit working within us in this particular culture, but also to try to limit the harm that is always possible in our midst. I will conclude by mentioning 3 key virtues that Guardini also suggests that we need in these times of transition: earnestness, gravity, and asceticism. And I will conclude, in fact, with this quote from Guardini. Earnestness must will to know what is really at stake. It must face heroically the duties forced upon man by his new situation. We need to be truly realistic, as Pope Francis always calls us to be. The virtue of gravity will be spiritual, a personal courage devoid of the pathetic, a courage opposed to the looming chaos. This gravity to courage must restrain the chaos rising out of the very works of man, the works that we have allowed to be disconnected from our creativity, that we have allowed to take on a power of their own. Artificial intelligence could be a key example of that. The modern era rebelled against asceticism with every fiber of itself, because it saw in asceticism the quintessence of all from which it wished to be free. But we must learn again to be a true master by conquering and by humbling ourselves first. In no other way will we achieve the lordship over our own power. I will conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia, for your philosophical and anthropological view of the world of work, and for indicating the 3 key virtues of worker. In some sense, I think you were referring to the importance to the subjective dimension of labor. If we refer to the compendium, the social doctrine, the objective component of labor is important, but the very important part is the subjective dimension and the social dimension, because we today work together, we work with others. And now we move to the second presentation from local groups from Italy. Will present Don Walter Magnoni, which is the Central National Ecclesiastical Counselor for Italy of the Foundation. Don Walter is also in the Archdiocese of Milan, is in charge of the Pastoral Office for Social and Labor Issues since 2000, so many years. And he has a number of duties. He's the coordinator of the Lombardy Region Social Pastoral, a member of the group of experts and consultants of the Italian Episcopal Conference Office for Pastoral and Social Matters. Please, Don Walter, have the floor.
Grazie a tutti. Allora, io parlo nell'ora in cui le luci sono soffuse e la digestione è al pieno, per cui se qualcuno chiude gli occhi non mi offendo, quindi state tranquilli, capisco benissimo. Allora, naturalmente il tema è complicato ma è molto bello: lavoro umano, occupazione inclusiva. Su questo aspetto a livello di gruppi italiani ci siamo occupati in questo anno, provando anche a scrivere dei documenti. Se qualcuno fosse interessato, i gruppi locali hanno prodotto i documenti e sono a disposizione di tutti. Essendoci già questi documenti, io mi posso sentire libero di dire 3 cose molto veloci per provare a ragionare su questa questione. Come può rimanere umano il lavoro nel tempo della digitalizzazione e dall'altra parte avere un'occupazione inclusiva? Questa è la grossa sfida. Allora, a me sembra che come sarà il futuro noi non lo sappiamo e coloro che vogliono prevederlo rischiano spesso, come hanno fatto gli economisti nei tempi della crisi, di prendere delle grosse cantonate. Mi spiace per chi deve tradurre, cantonato non è una parola. Però le 3 sfide che io ritengo fondamentali per il futuro del lavoro sono: prima sfida, la sfida della memoria nel tempo di Google. Allora, Google è uno strumento fantastico, perché noi, se dobbiamo andare in qualsiasi posto, mettiamo Google Map e ci porta. Oppure adesso uno dice: ma chi è Walter Magnoni? Allora mette su Google il mio nome e qualcosa verrà fuori. Bene, Google è uno strumento importante nel nostro tempo perché ci dice in maniera puntuale alcuni dati, ma per il futuro, anche per il futuro del lavoro, a mio parere è decisivo non perdere la memoria, anzi esercitare fortemente la memoria. E qui voglio dire la prima cosa: c'è una differenza sostanziale tra la memoria dell'uomo e la memoria dei computer, delle macchine. Perché vedete, quando per esempio sul nostro cellulare abbiamo fatto tante foto e ci viene fuori memoria quasi piena, basta cancellare un po' di foto e la memoria si libera e queste foto non ci sono più, soprattutto se svuotiamo il cestino. La memoria dell'uomo si muove precisamente in maniera opposta. Qualsiasi fatto noi viviamo si incide dentro di noi, a partire dai primi eventi primordiali. Tant'è che ci sono persone che magari hanno subito dei traumi nell'infanzia e questi traumi sono finiti nell'inconscio e devono fare un percorso doloroso di psicanalisi del profondo per recuperare quell'esperienza vissuta, riappropriarsene e riconciliarsi. Tutto quello che noi viviamo entra dentro di noi. Allora io ritengo che sia fondamentale questo recupero della memoria, questo imparare anche a elaborare i lutti, a far sì che noi sappiamo leggere quello che accade. Il nostro tempo vive una minaccia, che è quella che la perdita della memoria porti le persone ad avere nostalgia di tempi passati che sono stati anche negativi, ma si dimenticano e quindi soprattutto i più giovani li vivono quasi come se fossero stati diversi da come in realtà sono stati. Allora anche per il lavoro è fondamentale recuperare questo tema della memoria. Nel tempo di Google rimane strategico questo impegno. Il lavoro ha bisogno di persone che conoscano i processi storici, che abbiano ben presente questi nessi. Abbiamo una memoria da trasmettere di generazione in generazione. Il ruolo dei padri e delle madri è quello di trasmettere la memoria. Chi dimentica il passato e pensa di essere all'anno 0 compie un'operazione arrogante e miope. Questo era il primo punto. Il secondo punto, la seconda sfida, è il ruolo della cultura al tempo del web. Vedete, collegata alla memoria vi è la cultura. Il lavoro umano è inclusivo e si alimenta col pensiero. Abbiamo un estremo bisogno, anche nel mondo del lavoro, di persone che sappiano pensare. Accanto allo studio della storia, vedo cruciale quello delle materie umanistiche e scientifiche. Quanto è importante oggi lo studio della filosofia, ma anche della matematica. Dietro a ogni macchina c'è una mente, c'è una sequenza logica che sa programmare. Ecco perché oggi nelle facoltà di ingegneria si inizia a studiare filosofia. Il mondo del web è in grado di fornirci molteplici informazioni in tempi quasi istantanei, però il problema diviene il rischio di essere come chi affoga nell'oceano di tante notizie e naviga da un sito all'altro senza mai fermarsi. Si legge tutto velocemente, notizie, mail, notifiche. In questo mare di informazione non si riesce a distinguere ciò che è essenziale da ciò che è vano. Diceva Paolo VI, e lo ripete Benedetto XVI al numero 53 della Caritas in Veritate: il mondo soffre per mancanza di pensiero. E oggi il mondo elemosina uomini capaci di pensare e leggere la realtà, persone che sanno cogliere la grammatica degli affetti e riconoscere l'unicità che ogni lavoratore ha con la sua storia. Vedete, un lavoratore che si sente riconosciuto come persona e non ridotto a numero lavorerà meglio e in maniera più stimolante per tutti. Questo compito spetta a noi. Penso a quanto abbiamo bisogno di manager che guardano negli occhi le persone, che sanno leggere le storie e cogliere le attitudini di chi hanno di fronte. Ma senza una vera formazione culturale, senza la fatica del pensiero, senza lo sforzo di trovare soluzioni, si rischierà la demotivazione. Io vedo ambienti di lavoro poco attaccati alla loro azienda, scarsamente propensi ad apprendere nuove metodologie, perché poco stimolati alla fatica del pensiero. Mi rendo conto che non è facile questo, ma lo ritengo decisivo. Il tempo che si impiega per conoscere i lavoratori e per motivarli e per farli crescere culturalmente non è mai tempo perso. Pensare è faticoso. Noi capiamo bene, per esempio, che se vogliamo fare un'attività sportiva significativa dobbiamo accettare una fatica. Capiamo bene che se vogliamo suonare uno strumento dobbiamo stare dentro la disciplina di ore e ore di esercizio. Capiamo meno che non ci si improvvisa nei ragionamenti e che questo richiede questa fatica che però va affrontata. Il futuro del lavoro passa anche da una crescita culturale che vince la sfida della velocità, del guardare le cose con superficialità. E infine, ultima sfida, è la sfida della spiritualità nel tempo di Facebook e di Instagram e di Twitter e via dicendo. Allora, ritengo che oltre alla memoria e alla cultura sia decisivo per il futuro del lavoro recuperare una spiritualità. Allora, questo ce lo insegnano bene già i benedettini. La storia dei benedettini è una storia chiara che parla in maniera univoca dicendoci che coloro che cercano Dio e vivono in maniera seria questo sono stati inventori di un mondo come il mulino a vento, il mulino d'acqua, l'aratro, lo champagne inventato da Dom Pérignon, che era un benedettino. Allora noi capiamo bene che c'è una possibilità di futuro se riusciamo a recuperare una spiritualità solida. E quando io penso ad una spiritualità solida, penso anche al coraggio di porci le domande di fondo. Per cosa vivo? Che cosa vale la pena? La sfida della spiritualità è quella che ci aiuta a distinguere tra ciò che è essenziale e ciò che è vano. Perché il rischio, se no, è quello che io vedo a volte anche in Italia, dove ci sono genitori che si lamentano con i professori perché gli hanno dato un voto al loro figlio troppo basso, oppure che addirittura arrivano a picchiarsi per una partita di calcio dei bambini. E uno dice, ma com'è possibile che noi riusciamo ad arrabbiarci così tanto per cose così piccole e non riusciamo ad andare all'essenziale? È precisamente perché abbiamo perso le domande di fondo, perché non ci interroghiamo più su quella domanda anche decisiva del morire. La sfida della spiritualità prende su di sé anche la domanda seria sulla morte. Filosofi, teologi, letterati seri hanno affrontato questo tema e lì dentro hanno trovato soluzioni per andare al senso della vita. Queste tre sfide, la sfida della memoria, la sfida della cultura, la sfida della spiritualità, a me sembra che ci possano aiutare per un lavoro migliore e per rispondere alla nostra domanda di un lavoro umano e un'occupazione inclusiva. Grazie.
Grazie Don Walter per questo bellissimo e sentito intervento che mi sembra sia stato molto apprezzato e per averci fatto riflettere sulla necessità di stare molto attenti a seguire la velocità che ci impone l'innovazione tecnologica, che alle volte ci fa perdere di vista la necessità di lavorare con serietà, di prendersi il tempo per riflettere. Prendersi tempo è un'espressione su cui dovremmo riflettere di più e che in definitiva ci dice che sempre più è una questione di educazione. Essere preparati per il mondo del lavoro è una questione di educazione. Educazione e formazione sono sempre più intrinsecamente legate. We move on to the third presentation from the local groups. Father Justinus Peck for Germany. Father Justinus studied business administration in Frankfurt, Leipzig, and Madrid. He received a PhD in business ethics, and afterward he studied theology in Rome. I just mentioned the beautiful meeting that was organized by the German chapter of the Foundation in last November on the topic of the future work in the light of the artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. Please, Father Justinus, have a floor.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and also it was very glad to hear from Father Walter as he focused so much on spirituality. I thought once this was the core competence of monks, so I like to leave all those topics about spirituality behind and try to explain you what we did in our German group. And the famous and interesting thing is that we are living in such a time of revolution where we even don't know what does revolution mean, because we are in those times and we don't know exactly where this process is going to. And if you just see what happened between 2007 and 2017, the two biggest companies in 10 years ago, that was ExxonMobil and General Electric. And they are not in terms of market value. And if you look at the two biggest companies of today, you have their Apple and Google or Alphabet. And also the market value itself is much, much bigger as those of ExxonMobil and General Electric, and they are not any longer on the list of the 10 biggest companies any longer. And so when we started our reflection, we thought about what is really the change in management and in business. And if you just look at this little slide and see, 20 years ago, I need a pointer. I'm pointing it. I'm using the pointer, yeah. And if you just look 10 years ago, this was the idea how organization is built up. You had someone lonely at the top, and then all the others are working in their own parts. And nowadays, we have something like a web where the manager is somewhere in the middle. And this is also something where we just realizing how the actual pontiff is changing a bit the system of ruling the Catholic Church. But this is not our topic of today. The point is that we realized, okay, there's so much behind, pushed by technology, that this or those kinds of leading a company won't work any longer. And therefore, if you just take this little citation of Pope Francis, what was a bit our idea on working on that topic, there we realized that we have to be powerful and humble at the same time, and this is our approach, which I like to present to you right now. There's a three-step approach. First, where we like to give some suggestions, is the macro level. The second one is the meso level, which means macro is the whole economy, meso is more the focus on the single company. And for sure, they are connected. And then on the third level, you have the micro level, which is you and me. And for sure, we are also influencing how a company is working. And then we have our behavior has also a strong impact on the macro level. Therefore, I want to go through now in a three-step approach and give some ideas for the macro, meso, and micro level, what we developed all together in our yearly session, and we meet every year at the Jesuit University in Frankfurt. Therefore, our suggestions for the macro level. First of all, what is the correct price for a working hour? Maybe you think that's quite an old question, but it is a question which is coming up once again. If you just look at Foodora, that are those little guys who are bringing the food from the pizza company to your home, and how they are organized. They are not employed any longer, and their wage is strong under pressure. So we have to reflect once again how in the new technology development we have still something like a wage where a family father or family mother can support really the whole family. The second is help for formation. On a macro level, we have to reflect about what is the right thing, how we can develop, and we heard it from you, Signora Del Bocca, how this is already starting in our society and especially here in Italy, but it's nearly the same in Germany. Third point is Rerum Novarum of Pope Leo XIII, and he formulated those principal ideas of partnership and participation of the employees, which is strongly developed also in Germany, where we have to reflect once again, how can we introduce this idea of Pope Leo XIII to the companies of today? And when you just look at Amazon or Google or Facebook, how they are working, this idea of Leo XIII has still a strong impact. Next point is, this is the wonderful dream of the new working environment. Yeah, but what does it really mean? We realized that since the 70s, more and more new employments you can only get if you have a very good university degree. That means that on a macro level of the state, we have to rethink how can we redevelop our whole university system. And then, as we have seen in the US general election and also in the Brexit election, this digitalization and the use of those new medias can influence the results in a very hard form. And therefore, our perspective should be focus on the losers of the age of digitalization. There are many losers, and not on the one hand, it's pretty clear it's a wonderful technology. It's an interesting, quite new world which is coming up. And just look at the digital natives, which means your kids, for example, or grandchildren. But on the other side, there will be also losers, and the responsibility of the work of the church is to look on those and to focus on those. If we switch to the micro level, therefore, I just like to present you the results, what we discussed over there. There are new forms of and understanding of the management formation. What does this mean? The aim should be to focus on the principles of the Catholic social teaching. And here the church in all its parts has a very big influence. And I'd just like to give you a personal, okay, I'm teaching also business leadership experience in the German Business School. And I'm doing this as a monk, but this is not at all a Catholic or Christian business school. And the interesting thing is I'm using there the principles like personality, solidarity, subsidiarity, without saying where they are coming from. I'm just using them and explaining them how you can develop your own style of leadership. And that's very interesting. They use it and they're inspired by, and maybe afterwards they recognize that's coming from a very old tradition. And then the next point on the meso level is the responsibility of the church is focusing on that dialogue. It doesn't mean that we as a church say, okay, this is a new development, we don't want to have it. No, I think we did it many times in the past. I think we have to have a positive approach on what is going on, and therefore we should try to discuss with the people what's coming up, and even to discuss this difficulty of 100% transparency. So the Catholic Church can be a kind of ethical filter, a kind of a platform for discussing ethical, relevant issues of the digitalization. And then the last thing is the micro level. Please excuse me, there's a little error on the top. I wrote meso level, but that's not the micro level. And therefore the Catholic Church should focus on the future of the talents and be a kind of talent formation society in all its parts. We are, as the Church, the oldest global player. We have the oldest and the best schools and universities in the world. And our responsibility is just to imagine what impact this can have if we make this kind of transformation through all our schools and universities and try to educate the best digital to try to educate those people, those young students who are able to drive this process of digitalization and what an impact this can have on society. And then the last point, just to focus on this, is the principles of the Catholic social teaching, as I mentioned before, are really key, and we have to come back to them. So the last thing is that I think, or we thought when we sat together that the Catholic social teaching helps first to hear and recognize, secondly to see and look through in a more profound way, and then it stops this pondering silence if you just think about Tesla and the self-driving cars and who is really driving this process of discussion of ethical issues in those self-driving cars. No one is doing it, so it's our responsibility. So our idea is that the Catholic Church should be the leading discussion group to bring this process of ethical and digitalization together. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father Justinus, for bringing here in our international conference some of the many suggestions of the beautiful German conference of November last year. I deeply admire Father Justinus because he managed to study theology and business administration and to mix together the two, and at the end he made a very, very beautiful presentation. So thank you again. And now we have two distinguished speakers that will comment, will react to the many issues that have come out in our previous presentations. The first is Dr. José Manuel González Páramo. José is a very good friend of the Foundation. He has been participating to our international conference at least in the last 3 or 4 editions. José has a PhD and MPhil and MEA in economics from Columbia University. He served as a member of the Executive Board of the European Central Bank from 2004 to 2012, and he was also a member of the Governing Council of the European Central Bank. And now he is an Executive Board member at BBVA, the Banco Bilbao Vizcaya Argentaria. As Executive Board Director, is the Chief Officer, Global Economics, Regulation and Public Affairs. Please, José, have the floor.
Thank you for having invited me again. But I have to say, to be frank from the start, I cannot do justice to all the interesting things we have heard here. So I will comment or expand on a number of issues that have appeared here and there that, of course, caught my attention. For a start, I would say that I share this optimistic view that has been spelled out by Father Peck. So I cannot do otherwise, because I'm convinced that in the same way the first, the second, and the third industrial revolutions worked for the common good, this one has to. But we can do a lot of things. And the first thing to do is to try to diagnose what's going on in order to help politicians, companies, maybe unions as well, and workers to understand what responsibility they have in order to trigger the changes that would permit digital to work in favor of, if not all, most of society. There is one of the issues that came up yesterday and today, which is inequality in its various forms. Because obviously, once having said that, with hindsight, revolutions have worked in favor of society, with some differences, because the first industrial revolution was favorable to the low qualified people that could raise a level of living due to the innovations. This one is complementary to skills, and this is creating a special difficulty, because if you don't have skills, building up skills is quite a daunting task. But having said that, what we see these days is, first of all, a special type of inequality which is called polarization, which is quite complex, because it's not inequality in the old sense, that low wages and high wages are ever growing ever more distant. Is that the segments of the population or the families living on average wages, medium wages, those are suffering the brunt. It is low-wage people that perform usually tasks that involve little qualification but interpersonal relation. Think of care to the elderly, and think to services connected to tourism and so on and so forth. Those are doing well, and also the highly qualified jobs. Those that combine very well with new technologies are doing excellent. But it is the middle. So this is called polarization, and we should think about what this implies. Because if we stay put and do nothing, what we will see is over time, first of all, inequalities increasing between workers, and in ways that we didn't see before in the history of industrial revolutions, and this is very much reflected in the rise of populism, by the way. And one of the remarks or the regrets that you hear is, what was of the middle classes connected to car production, for instance, or jobs of this kind? Think of cashiers in banking or telephone operators. Those are replaced by new technologies. Those are threatened or even directly wiped away by robotics, by the use of big data, and so on and so forth. So this is one of the issues. But don't forget that from the beginning of the 20th century to this day, technological evolution or revolution has increased average incomes in between 8 and 10 times, which is the price to get if we do it right. But the threats are there. In terms of companies, moving from workers to companies, we see a risk that small and medium-sized companies could be at risk coming from especially the platform economy. Those small companies work very well. They produce tailor-made goods or services for constituencies. But increasingly, you see that these companies lack of financial resources, investment capacity, vision, and the talent, culture, and labor relations that would make them prepared for working in this new world. Is the collaborative economy, the sharing economy, the response? Might be in part, but it also implies a lot in terms of labor relations, because what the sharing economy means is that you unbundle the traditional work in terms of tasks. Some of them could be outsourced to robots. Some of them could be outsourced to different companies. The advantage is that there is a direct contact between the client, people, and the one that has the expertise to produce things, say the car driver in Uber. It disintermediates, but it creates a middle ground type of worker that nobody likes. It's not the traditional small size entrepreneur, nor the traditional FTE, the full-time equivalent employee. And so from the point of view of labor relations, we have a lot to think about this without trying to hinder, of course, innovation. And finally, think of globalization and the emergence of poor countries thanks to the global value chains. Many countries in Africa, not to speak about Asia, have found their way thanks to the fact that elements of production were outsourced to these countries. Those countries that have not had the vision to understand that at some point technology would bring those jobs back to the origin, because robotics is what it does. It's cheaper to outsource to a robot close to your home or close to where the clients live, instead of sending production to Asia and then bringing things back in containers. This is happening already now. But this might mean that differences of income and standards of living across countries could widen, and this, of course, has geopolitical implications. Those are, I think, trends that we can change. But first of all, we have to understand what is the ceteris paribus, the evolution of megatrends associated to inequality between people, between companies, and between countries. Protectionism could be a reflection of a misunderstanding of what this means. Populism, and we have it with us already now, altering the global scene, as we can see. Think of Brexit, think of elections in the US, think of the fragmentation of the political landscape in most countries, including the one we're in, or mine, or including yours, Father. So I think this has a strong connection with not just free trade and globalization, but with technological evolution not being tackled in an appropriate way, and this is not the case of your country, Father. Second point is about this type of employment, and this is a very strong call on rethinking labor relations, because employment going forward, and we can see it now, and this is why we can, in a way, reflect on the future in 10, 20 years. How is employment going to be? First of all, less routine and standard, because routines will be done by robots. They will do it better, they will do it cheaper, and less standard. Everything that can be standardized will be done by a machine. And one has to understand. And we cannot stop this. We cannot stop this, and if we stop this, it would be an artificial stopping leading to a death of the business that does that. There is an exception to this general call, which is human interaction-related jobs. In aging societies, you will need more and more of this type of jobs. So fortunately, these jobs will be there and will be possibly increasing in demand, but wages associated to those are not particularly high or attractive. Second, employment will be more fragmented. As I said before, collaborative economy or sharing economy implies that you can unbundle what you do in many elements. And this means that the tasks that we do, some of them, could be outsourced. So, and this is very important to understand because of the emergence of digital platforms is there. Admittedly, they are not terribly important as of now, but according to many, many studies, the platform economy will grow to very significant amounts going forward. And this means disintermediation from us of many of the tasks we do today. And we have to be prepared for that. This is not a drama, it's about understanding what is our role in this context. And third, it will be subject to continuous changes. And of course, we are prone to inertia because we are like to relax and lean back and saying, I have a degree, so my life is absolutely cleared. But this is not the case anymore, as we understand, as we know. Because as machines change, what we do with machines will have to change. There is no point in running against a machine or breaking machines like Luddites I think it's about dancing with machines. And what you have to learn is what makes you successful when the tune changes, you know. And there are things that machines will do with a high degree of difficulty. I will comment on that in a minute. So this means now, if one wants to profit most in society from the technical revolution, and taking into account these trends and the nature of employment that I have described, and if one agrees with that, I think from the social point of view, and from the point of view of of the common good, it is key to protect people and not jobs. And this is a principle that is very important to understand. What we care is about the welfare of people, not about the nature of a job which could be rendered obsolete by technology. And this means helping people succeeding in a world where jobs disappear. And this has a lot to do with education, with labor market policies, with the environment in which innovation takes place. So company laws, bureaucracy, and so on and so forth. But to focus on many of the things that, in particular, the introductory presentation has touched upon. Education. Education is extremely important. And I think equally important is the distinction between education for the future workers, so the young people today, and education for the workers that are already now in the labor market. As for the former, it was said before, and I agree, that STEM abilities are of the essence. So trying to promote more and more people choosing the right degrees and the right careers, and not those that ensure you a low wage or a low level of occupation is key. But equally important is to understand that what gives us advantage vis-a-vis robots, things that robots cannot replicate are creativity, art, thinking out of the box, complex human interaction, pattern extraction. What is the education system that can excel in producing this? Well, we have to invent it, because we don't have it here. We don't have it in any place I know, except perhaps in some places in Asia. Training in skills that are not replicable by robots, and then you will succeed with them. And you don't need to think of very, super genius people to do that. I have examples of how this works in companies that are close to my country. You know Sarah, for instance. What is the specialty of Sarah? Of course, they are very good in logistics, blah, 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 but they have not been emulated so far in the way employees work for Sarah. They have conversations with clients. They identify patterns. They feedback quickly to the mother base, to the mother company. And this means quick renewal of what they have in stock, according to what people are expressing when they simply take a shirt and look at it and then hang it down. This is very difficult to imagine being done by a robot, talking also to potential clients. There is another company, Mercadona. And Mercadona illustrates another thing, which is the cross-training, which is the contrary of over-specialization. If you train people in a number of tasks so that they can jump from one to the other depending on demand, you are creating something very efficient that people like, and is very difficult to be replicated by a robot. So if you are with the public, but then you jump to inventories or to take note of things that have to be ordered to fabric, and people are equally able to do the three, you are creating a person which is more likely to have a more stable employment or to jump to a different employment because they have cultivated different skills. So cross-skilling is very important as one thinks of workers for the future, and also workers of today. Today, the key word is reskilling. Reskilling, continuous training, and again, helping people and not jobs, I think, is the key. As regards the labor market, it was a very good point raised by Professor Del Boca that it's extremely important to have employment services that work, To the difference of the situation you described, in Spain we have one, but it is so inefficient that maybe we could spend the money that we now allocate to it to different activities. So if you would use big data and artificial intelligence, you could produce employment services of the highest quality, because it's about information, it's about matching, it's about where my skills are needed, or where do I have to go to a training course that would allow me to be employed in this and this and this and this place. This is big data. This is, again, artificial intelligence, and this is new technologies. But it is very difficult to imagine that our service of employment, so-called INEM, would ever produce this outcome, at least in the very short term. But it's an obligation, of course, I think, of the political responsibles. Finally, a note on the universal basic income that was mentioned this morning. I think this would be an easy solution to a very complex problem with many drawbacks. One drawback is it is terribly expensive. Yeah, very expensive, and one has to finance it. Second drawback is that it could implicitly create by incentives a leisure class which is against inclusion, and I think against what makes inclusion, as was said at the beginning very rightly, the main driver of inclusion is having a job. So the universal basic income, as attractive as it may appear, is expensive and excludes people, which is contrary to what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, José, for your very clear description of the many questions which the labor market is approaching during these days, and for stressing the importance of education and training on the job, and also for identifying, finally, some tasks in which robots are less efficient than human beings, at least something in which human beings will remain better equipped. And now we have the second distinguished speaker, which will react to the previous speeches. Dr. Peter Scherrer, thank you for being with us today. Peter is Deputy General Secretary of the ETUC, European Trade Union Confederation. He is responsible for the wide-ranging and important policy areas of European social dialogue and workers' participation, including European Works Councils. Please, Peter, have the floor and react to so many suggestions we received.
Yeah, thank you very much again for the invitation and giving me the possibility to comment, and just want to start with explaining in the ETUC leadership, I'm the responsible colleague for alliances, for example, with churches, and maybe they have chosen me because I'm born in a very little Catholic village in Westphalia, and I do this work, I like this work very much so, but when I was listening to the contribution of Professor Delicata and Brother Walter, I said to myself, alliances is good, but you should deal with your things and I should deal with my things, because the spirituality, and that is not really my subject. So I was listening very attentive, but I'm much more down to earth and see the concrete things, and maybe it's a fruitful cooperation. Yeah, certainly it is. But I ask myself, when it comes to digitalization, what makes these change? What makes digitalization different from former rapid technological changes? And the major difference is simple. It's digitalization is dissolving time and space. That is that happened never before. Everything can be produced every time, anywhere in the world. Service can be delivered everywhere at any time in the world, and that of course has consequences for the existing patterns of industrial relations, of work relations, and that is the challenges for us. But digitalization, of course, when we talk about it, it was in the debates here during the breaks, and yesterday evening we were of course talking about digitalization, what advantages it has. And yesterday we already on the panel we said it can help to save resources, it can contribute to have less pollution, it can help to reduce dangerous and odorous work. In particular, the robotization can help. More individual freedom is possible. It is possible to have more arrangements with regard to working times and information. And you touched up on skills and qualification and education. That is, information is easier accessible for many more people. Communication is easier and possibly worldwide and affordable. But the negative aspects, and that here comes our work, of course, is the complete transparency, and it can turn into a complete control of the working and the private life. Permanent availability means body and soul are more or less under in a permanent state of alert. Stress and consequently health problems, psychological risks, psychosocial risks can occur. Forms of communication becoming more and more individualized and anonymous. Individualization of workers is the result of digitalization, undoubtedly. Fragmentation of work, and work is offered by platforms, and there we ask ourselves, who is then, is that the traditional employer? Who is employer? And do we have a responsible employer, or do we have a work provider or an agent? And you want to ask a question, or no? Are you and then a worker, is a worker turning into a client, or self-employed worker, or a contractor? So there is this debate about digitalization is of course challenging for the ones who represent the interest of the workers. Yeah? And another big issue is, of course, does digitalization kill jobs? And do we have then less jobs? And Professor Bocker referred to youth unemployment. Does digitalization add to the problems of already youth unemployment? So that is, I think, that is the most tricky question, and I have given up to find a definite answer to that. We will see. More I cannot say. There is good guessing, more or less based on short experiences, but nobody can really for sure say that we have more or less jobs. But one thing is pretty clear: training and education is needed to handle this technology. And that is a reason why, and I repeat that from yesterday, trade unions are very much in favor for having all efforts together with the employers with regard to education, with regard to skills and to training. And I repeat from yesterday, we are working now currently with the Business Europe, with the European Employer Association, to have that in our work program, how we can contribute to training and education, and to give more skills to workers to handle digitalization. But I would like to refer to, in the process of digitalization, we see that it comes possibly to more divides in society and in the companies. One divide is, of course, then who gets this education, who will be trained, who can benefit from education, and the ones who maybe were simply neglected, and there certainly we might face the problem between younger and older workers, that the older workers cannot cannot benefit anymore because companies are not willing to do that and to do that training and education, to support it and to finance it consequently. So do we have losers in this race for more education and more skills? Another divide is, of course, and that is in particular as a European trade unionist, the divide when it comes to regions in Europe. We have countries where digitalization is taken proactively, in particular in the Nordic countries. The Nordic countries really invest in digitalization. They support workers, they support the whole society in using it and pushing it, and they are certainly very much advanced when it comes to the digitalization of the society and the economy. And of course, big industrial nations like Germany, like France, or like Great Britain, and certainly Italy as well, but other regions in Europe where the financial means and the preconditions are not that good, they left behind, and I think some are sitting in a suburban slow train and some go with a fast train, and do we leave regions in Europe behind? I think there is an urgent need that the European policymakers act on that all have the same possibilities. I think, individualization versus social security. Individualization, I mentioned that already, and there I come back to some of the issues. Certainly our alliance between trade unions and churches is needed. Our social security system is based on solidarity, and that is one of the big values, I think that is, well, it's all based that we help each other. And when now a massive and a growing part of the working people, and I don't say workers, but working people in society do not have access anymore to this social security system, then they drop out. And how can we organize solidarity in our society? So that is a very, very big question. And can we still guarantee that we have this caring society? And I really must say I do not support immediately the idea of a minimum income for everybody, a general income, because it has. You mentioned the critical points in it, and it's certainly not contributing to inclusive society. So that is one reason. But we have to think, and we have to do that urgently, about our social security systems, how we can include everybody. How can we make them more accessible for workers who are not in the classic definition of workers? And that is currently what the European Commission has on the agenda, and I can only appeal to the national governments that they push for it, and that we have a more European approach that has something to do with the point I made about the regional divide. Because we might have more and more countries where the social security system will collapse, and the idea of the European Union is the idea of solidarity and subsidiarity. So the stronger shoulders carry more burdens and give more to the ones who are weaker, and that is, I think, one of the major policy demand we put forward. One thing I would like to take up as well from the contribution of Father Pech, he put several, I think 2 times, dialogue and participation, and I think that is absolutely needed. And you had 3 levels: meso, macro, and micro level, and all the levels are needed, and participation is one of the element which makes it possible that this transformation and the transformation of society, of labor relations and working conditions, that it's acceptable and that we do not generate losers. I don't want that digitalization process is leading to the fact that we have losers who are left behind and have to have an existence in very precarious working conditions, and the society has not really an answer apart from feeding them. Yeah, and so that is, I think we have to find new ways to have participation of workers and the workers' representatives. That is a challenge, and I say that quite openly. It is a challenge for trade unions as well, because we have less and less coverage of trade union agreements. Yeah, the economy or the labor relations are less and less covered by trade union agreements. In my home country, it's just 51% left. Yeah, that was a time in Germany when it was 90% was covered by collective agreements. It's still a reality in the Nordic countries, but in many other countries, and in some, it is almost gone. Yeah, there is no coverage at all, and that means that the working conditions and the payment and the remuneration is done on an individual base, and we know that an individual negotiation is always much weaker than when you to have organized a workforce. And here we come back to 1891. Leo XIII, he said, organized work. They have to organize and make your interest known, make your interest, show it to the employers, and have a dialogue and find ways. Yeah, and that is what where I really strongly believe that is the Catholic social teaching can add to a social dialogue, is one of the pillars of the social dialogue. And there I see really a very good foundation of a cooperation between trade unions and the churches, but many other aspects as more, and even some in some spiritual aspects. I would say I see ways to cooperate, and in particular when it comes to very human values, solidarity and making sure that your workmate has the same good condition as you have, and that the others who work around you have a decent and have a decent living from the work you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for bringing in our debate more elements of concreteness, and for stressing the importance to concentrate on the real needs of workers. We have 12 minutes left for our conference, and I would like to allocate 2 minutes to each of our panelists for a topic which I think is very important, but has been only slightly touched in this session. The question is, in 10 years' time, in your opinion, how is going to evolve the world of work as far as the gender gap? Women's participation rate to labor force will increase, or we are going to continue losing also in the next 10 years such a crucial resource for the true integral human development? I think is very important. We have very few time left, but I will make a round table, very short, 2 minutes for such mega trend.
Yes, I'm glad to answer the question.
First of all, I am totally optimistic that the women participation rate will increase as it is doing in this country. Though we are certainly the country that has a lowest women's participation rate, one of the lowest, but in the last few years there is a slow increase, and we have an interesting gap. We have the position of, for instance, women in boards of companies, independent members of companies, that is very, very high. Is about 30%, close to Sweden, but in the middle there is really not a good representation. So first of all, I want to say that the presence of women in the labor force is a weapon for economic policy, because more women working, every woman that goes into the labor market, it's just, I'm trying to find the right word, creates jobs, because she leaves the family and she goes out for 5, 6, 8 hours. So she will have to be helped. She will buy services outside. So it has a fantastic multiplier effect.
Nadia?
I think in a sense I'm going to dodge the question for the simple reason that I don't think we can afford to be naive about the changes of digital culture. I don't think digital culture is going to be more of what modernity was. Digital culture is going to fundamentally change everything that we have learned to assume, including something as basic as how we understand ourselves as male and female. I think this is something that we need to seriously consider. I think that we also need to consider the categories that we use, even when it comes to work. Many categories that we use were in fact constructs that were created in a particular culture. As we move in a radically different culture, those constructs might also die. Essentially, I think what we need to retrieve is the true sense of the human, which is why I think what we really need to invest in is the full development of the human according to those characteristics that cannot be replicated precisely because they cannot be automated. We are at a point where we are not simply automating, manual labor. We are at a point where we are automating the skills of doctors, the skills of lawyers. We will increasingly be automating everything that we can do as human beings. Machines will be able to do better than us everything that we essentially do. So I think it is really, really important that we try to focus, in particular in our education, on what it really means to be human and try to nurture those characteristics, in particular spiritual characteristics, that in fact will guarantee that we can order this development of culture in a way that will guarantee a hopeful future for us all.
Thank you. Don Walter?
Il discorso sarebbe lungo. Io enuncio solo un indice di 3 cose che sarebbero interessanti tematizzare. La prima, sono in linea con quanto imparato da Giovanni Paolo II, il quale sosteneva il valore della differenza sessuale. E quindi per questo io ritengo che in ogni equipe di lavoro, se si vuole lavorare bene, sia necessaria una presenza sia maschile che femminile. Perché questo l'ho scoperto vivendo, abbiamo veramente approcci complementari alla vita che si aiutano l'uno all'altro. E se questo è vero, allora il secondo passaggio su cui sarebbe interessante soffermarsi è come nella Chiesa anche sarebbe corretto rimmaginare un ruolo delle donne. Forse lo dico con sofferenza e anche qualche volta dobbiamo ascoltare di più il mondo femminile perché ci aiuterebbe. Una cosa che vedo in maniera evidente è che ambienti solo maschili o anche solo femminili rischiano poi di incartarsi perché mancano di respiro. E quindi questo aspetto, se è vero quello che si diceva prima della differenza sessuale, vanno alimentati. L'ultimo tema sarebbe quello di recuperare la riflessione della dottrina sociale della Chiesa che fa su questo tema. Pensate che già nella Rerum Novarum è presente la questione e c'è un'attenzione, siccome si riconosce questa diversità, a distinguere anche tra il carico di lavoro che deve essere pensato. Allora io credo che oggi la grossa sfida sia quello, ed è quella la grossa tensione, di armonizzare il rapporto tra vita e famiglia. Questo è il vero punto e non so come uscirne, ma di una cosa sono convinto: una donna che ha una vita familiare realizzata lavora meglio.
Father Justinus?
Yeah, if you talk to those who are guiding or leading this process of transformation in the US, in the Silicon Valley, for example, and they are thinking 10 years ahead, then the society will completely different. And I think also our core products as church, of products, like that we are teaching who is God, and secondly, that we will offer all human beings a possibility of eternal life. These two topics are under pressure. First, because they like to construct something like a supercomputer which is leading everybody of you. If you are just using Facebook, you're really realizing already how you are guided by something like a super brain. And secondly, what means eternal life? They try to invent products, processes, which will help all human beings to live longer. And even some of those are thinking of something of eternal life, that we can live here more than 100 or 150 years. So the interesting thing is that two of our core products might be under pressure.
Okay, thank you. Jose?
So very much to the point, I'm optimistic about closing the imbalances pretty quickly. First of all, it was said before, because participation is visibly increasing, especially in some sectors of work in society. Think of public administration, think of the administration of justice, think of the educational system, and of course, more and more standards or good practices associated to governance in companies, and so on and so forth. In order to help this process to continue, social services have to contribute to it and be complementary to those, but also mindsets have to change more at the level of companies and at the level of families, in the way the roles are split. And let me say in passing that digital, I cannot theorize this because it's a very improvised reflection, but I see two areas where digital could favor the closing of the gap. One is the more flexibility associated to the possibility to telework, so this makes more easy to strike a life-work balance. And secondly, and this is a finding that I've seen associated to microfinance in Latin America. Microfinance finances very small projects, usually connected to women to a large extent. And you cannot imagine the difference in compliance and in performance of the loans granted to young, poor women vis-a-vis men, which means that more businesses are grown, pushed or under the responsibility of women. I don't know if this can be generalized, but digital is behind this.
Good example.
Yep.
Peter.
Yeah, very concrete answer. I take up what Professor Boca said, the example of the boards. Yeah, I was myself, since I'm a German trade unionist, I could participate in the co-determination system. I was in boards of ThyssenKrupp, of Opel and Vodafone, and I remember this debate when we did not have any legal provision. And the debate was always, yeah, we will do that, we commit ourselves. But nothing happened, yeah. It was lip service, and unfortunately, I would love to have seen it, doing it on a voluntary basis, yeah, saying we believe in it and we do it. but it was lip service. And this is with many other things in this respect as well. So unfortunately, we have to probably, in many instances, we have to go for legal provisions to achieve it. I would have preferred to do it without legal provisions and doing it because of our commitment, but that is certainly not possible only. So we work for it as a trade unions, trying to fight for it. That is clearly our aim, yeah, to close this gender gap, yeah. Yes, I'm optimistic, yeah.
So thank you. With these words of hope, we conclude the session. Thank you to everybody.